Welcome to Threads of Truth, a podcast where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today, we examine the haunting disappearance of Claudia Kirschhoch.
It's a case that really gets under your skin. It forces you to look at this idea of a perfect vacation, a paradise, and see the vulnerability hidden right underneath.
Absolutely. We're talking about May of 2000. Claudia is 29 years old. She's a travel writer on what's essentially a working vacation, and she vanishes from 7 Mile Beach in Negril, Jamaica.
One of the most famous beaches in the world. She's seen walking along the shore one afternoon, and then nothing. She's just gone.
And that's the central haunting question here, isn't it? It's a paradox. How does a young woman, who her family describes as incredibly organized, meticulous even, disappear without a trace from a busy, crowded, supposedly secure tourist resort?
Especially when she leaves everything behind.
Everything. Her passport, all her credit cards, her cash.
Yeah.
All locked in the hotel safe.
Right. And that paradox really defines this whole story. We aren't just going to walk through a cold case file here. What we're really exploring is a perfect storm.
A perfect storm of what?
Of institutional resistance, of missing evidence, of this deep conflict between local and international investigators. The story of Claudia Kirschhoch is really about what happens when all the circumstantial evidence points one way to foul play. But the system itself seems designed to prevent any kind of justice.
Okay, so let's unpack this timeline, because you have to understand who Claudia was to really grasp how unlikely it is that she would just walk away from her life.
For sure. She was born in 1971, so she's 29 at the time. Physically, she's described as quite petite, 5'2", about 105 pounds, dark hair.
And she had a very distinct tattoo, right? A phoenix on her right hip.
Yes, a memorable detail. And professionally, she was on top of the world. She had just landed what everyone called her dream job.
As a travel writer for Frommer's Travel Guys in New York.
Exactly, a huge deal. She just moved into a new apartment in Queens. Her family really emphasized her personality. She was orderly, responsible, professional.
And that meticulous nature becomes so important later when we look at the state of her hotel room.
It's critical. But first, you have to understand that her being in Jamaica at all was... It was basically an accident, a fluke.
She wasn't supposed to be there.
No. She and another journalist, Tanya Grosinger, were scheduled for a press trip to Havana, Cuba. They were going to review a new Sandals Beaches resort there.
But this is May of 2000, and history kind of gets in the way.
It does. The trip gets canceled abruptly on May 24th, and it's because of the whole Elian Gonzalez custody battle, which is ramping up tensions between the U.S. and Cuba.
So the Cuba trip is off, and they can't get immediate flights back to New York.
Right. So Sandals makes them an offer. We'll put you up free of charge at our resort in Negril, Jamaica, a complimentary extended stay.
And Claudia, even though she was disappointed about Cuba, she decided to, make the best of it.
And that's where the story pivots. It goes from a professional trip to a personal mystery. She gets to Negril, and she befriends a bartender at the resort named Anthony Grant.
She was a big reggae fan, apparently.
A huge fan. And he offers to take her to a local club, off the resort, to hear some authentic music.
And their interaction on May 26th, the night before she disappears, is really the last detailed picture we have of her.
It is. They go out dancing. Now, Grant's later account is very specific and maybe a little self-serving. He claims he just dropped her off at a place called Alfred's Bar and Restaurant, and that was it. Never saw her again.
But Claudia told her friend Tanya a different story, a more detailed one.
A much more detailed one. She confided in Tanya that she'd gone skinny dipping with him, that they'd smoked marijuana, or dope, as she called it.
And this is a crucial detail. She also told Tanya that Grant asked her out again for the next night, and she said no.
She declined. A possible rejection. And that's an interpersonal dynamic that investigators would later focus on pretty heavily. It happens right before she goes missing.
So that brings us to the last day she was seen, Saturday, May 27th, 2000.
She has breakfast with Tanya, who'd managed to get an earlier flight home. They make plans. See you in New York for dinner. Normal stuff.
And then what's the last confirmed independent sighting?
Around 1 p.m., a resort lifeguard sees her. He's the last verified witness.
What was she doing?
Just walking. Walking along 7 Mile Beach. She was wearing a blue bikini, a t-shirt, carrying a little portable radio, and maybe that notebook she always had with her.
And crucially, she was walking away from the resort property.
Away from the resort.
Yeah.
And that moment, that sighting is the line. It's the boundary between when she was there and when she was gone.
And when you look back at that timeline now, there's a huge red flag that just jumps out immediately.
A massive one. Anthony Grant, the bartender.
What did he do?
The very next day, Sunday the 28th, he calls in sick to work. And he stays out for the next 4 days.
4 days.
An immediate, unexplained 4-day absence that lines up perfectly with the window of her disappearance.
Wow. So, of course, nobody realizes she's missing right away.
Yeah.
That's always the problem in these tourist cases.
It's the information void. The delay is killer for an investigation. She was due back at work in New York on June 2nd. When she's a no-show, her bosses at Frommer's call her parents, Fred and Marianne.
And they call the resort. And the response they get from Sandals is, it's not just concerning, it's genuinely alarming.
It's shocking. The resort tells them, oh yeah, our maids noticed her bed hadn't been slept in for several days.
They knew.
They knew. They had flagged it to internal security, but nobody, not the resort, not the police, had bothered to contact her family.
So precious days were just lost. The scene wasn't secured. Nothing.
Nothing. And her parents, they knew immediately. Her mother said Claudia was so orderly, she never would have just left without calling them. They felt right away that something was very, very wrong.
And the state of her room just confirmed it. This wasn't a person who planned to leave.
Not at all. When the room is finally searched, everything is there. Her clothes are neatly packed in her suitcase.
Except for what she was wearing.
Right, just the bikini, the t-shirt, the radio. But her laptop was there. And this is the absolute nail in the coffin for the voluntary disappearance theory.
Her safe.
Her entire identity. Her passport, her credit cards, her camera, her cell phone, and $180 in cash. All sitting there, untouched, in the hotel safe.
You don't run off to live in the hills with a new lover and leave behind your passport and all of your money.
You just don't.
So this is where the story shifts, right? It goes from a search for a missing person to this frustrating fight against what seems like obstruction.
Total obstruction. The Kirschhochs fly to Negril, and they're met with what they call dead ends everywhere they turned.
And it starts at the resort itself.
Yeah.
The failures there are so profound, you almost can't believe they're accidental.
It really makes you suspect a cover-up from minute one. First, the security logbook. The book that recorded the license plate of every single car that entered or left the resort for the entire month of May.
The month she vanished.
It's missing, just gone.
Convenient.
Unbelievably convenient. Then, to make it worse, there was a security camera. It was mounted near her room.
Okay, so that should have footage.
It should have.
Great.
But the videotape had been recorded over before anyone could look at it.
You're kidding me.
Nope. So any chance of seeing if she left in a car or if someone was near her room, erased, intentionally or not, it's gone.
But the worst failure, the most unbelievable one, has to be what they did with her room.
Oh, it's unforgivable from an investigative standpoint. It's a potential crime scene, but the hotel staff,
They clean it.
they cleaned it thoroughly. Housekeeping and security went in, cleaned it top to bottom, and then rented it out to another guest.
Before any forensics team could even get near it.
Before anyone, so any trace evidence, fingerprints, fibers, DNA, it's just gone, wiped away. And her cell phone, which was with her things, was later misplaced by the hotel and never seen again.
So if you're looking for signs of a coordinated effort to protect the resort's reputation over finding a missing woman,
It looks a lot like that, and the resort's public statements just made everything worse.
right, the PR director, Leo Lambert, he holds a press conference.
And he just throws fuel on the fire. He stands up there and claims Claudia had been partying and just ran away to live in the hills with a Jamaican lover.
Shifting all the blame onto her, painting her as this reckless adventure seeker.
Exactly. A narrative that the local media just ate up. It infuriated her parents, who were trying to tell everyone how responsible she was, and it allowed all this local speculation to just run wild.
And that PR director, Lambert, he later admitted he just made it all up, right?
He did. He admitted he completely fabricated the story. Why? To protect the resort's image. To protect tourism, which is the absolute lifeblood of that economy.
So that just destroys any trust the family might have had.
Completely. Meanwhile, you have the local police, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the JCF, their initial focus.
It's accidental drowning.
The cleanest, simplest explanation. No bad press, no crime, and the only thing supporting it was that she was last seen in a bikini.
But that theory didn't hold up for long.
No, It fell apart fast. Even the lead detective, Denver Frater, called it highly unlikely. The water on 7 Mile Beach is shallow, the currents are weak. If she drowned, her body would have turned up.
And locals who know the area all said the same thing.
They did. But that lover in the hills story from the resort had already taken hold. So Fred Kirschhoch, her father, is spending all this crucial time not just searching, but fighting this false narrative, trying to get people to focus on the facts.
The facts being that all her belongings pointed to one thing.
Foul play. It was the only logical conclusion.
So with all this obstruction and just a total lack of progress locally, Claudia's parents, they take a huge step.
They have to. They realize they need outside help, so they bring in international resources, they get the FBI involved, and they hire a private American search and rescue team.
And that team included a specialist, right? A canine handler.
Yes. And this is where the case finally gets its first big break. The handler brings in her search dog, a specially trained dog named Valerie,
What was Valerie trained to do?
to track human scent, including what they call residual scent left under distress.
And this is where things get really critical. What did the dog find?
The dog's findings were stunning. Valerie picked up Claudia's scent right from her hotel room, tracked it across the beach, past the resort's boundary, to a little side gate that led into a residential neighborhood.
And where did the trail end?
At the home of Anthony Grant, the bartender,
Straight to his house.
directly to his house. And at his home, the dog's reaction was intense. Valerie hit on 3 specific items:
What were they?
a pair of Grant's boots, a pair of gloves, and a knife.
Wow. And they didn't stop there. They searched his car.
A white Toyota Corolla. And when they let the dog search the car, she picked up Claudia's scent in 2 places: the back seat and, most importantly, the trunk.
The trunk.
And the handler said the dog's reaction indicated distress. It suggested she might have been in that trunk against her will.
So this is huge. This is the first real, tangible lead.
It's everything. It's enough for the FBI to step in and take over. They collect the mat from the trunk, the boots, the gloves, the knife, and they ship it all back to the U.S. for proper forensic testing.
But the results of those tests, they create this impossible situation, this investigative stalemate.
They do. On one hand, they don't find any significant human blood on the items, but they find something else, something critical.
The hair.
A single strand of hair found in the trunk of the car. And the FBI lab confirms it belongs to Claudia Kirschhoch.
So that is definitive proof.
It is definitive proof that she was in the trunk of his car. It completely shatters the story of her just wandering off. This is physical evidence of transport, of concealment.
And what about the knife?
There was a tiny, untestable amount of blood on the blade. Not enough to analyze, but it was there.
So let's look at Grant's story during all this. When he's questioned, his account starts to change.
Drastically, he's investigated for weeks. At first, he flat out denies even knowing Claudia, an obvious lie.
Which he has to walk back.
Right. He eventually admits they went on a date, that he took her to a club and then to his home, which just makes that evening, the date, the rejection, even more significant.
And we already know about his suspicious 4-day absence from work right after she vanishes.
Right. A 4-day window where if you were involved, you'd have time to clean up, to dispose of evidence or a body.
And he takes a polygraph test.
Administered by the U.S. team. The results are reported differently depending on the source. Some say inconclusive, others say indicative of deception. One source close to the investigation insisted it was a clear fail.
But what did it show deception on?
On the key details Claudia had already told her friend about. He showed deception when he denied smoking marijuana with her, denied going skinny dipping, denied having any sexual relations with her.
So he's actively trying to hide the extent of their interaction.
Absolutely. So what happens to him? Well, Sandals fires him.
But not for suspicion of murder.
No, for violating a company policy against staff having intimate relationships with guests. It was a PR move.
And the Jamaican authorities, the JCF, what do they do with all this evidence? The dog, the hair, the polygraph?
Nothing. They do nothing. Detective Frater says publicly they just don't find enough evidence to believe Grant was involved.
Despite the hair in his trunk.
Despite everything, the JCF never considered him a suspect. No charges were ever filed.
And that's the brick wall. The U.S. investigators have this compelling chain of circumstantial evidence. And the local authorities just say, nope, not enough.
And the case just stops, it hits that wall, and it stops dead.
This case is just such a perfect, tragic example of why these investigations fail. You really can't separate the disappearance itself from the absolute failure of the investigation that followed.
No, you can't. You have to step back and look at the whole environment. It starts with what we call the information void. The reporting was delayed, which is standard for tourist cases.
Right, because no one knows they're missing for days.
And by the time they do, the scene is compromised, the logbook is gone, the CCTV is erased, the room is clean. The primary goal of the resort, and you could argue the local police too, was to protect the island's image.
And this isn't just about one or two mistakes. You're saying it's systemic. You have to look at the culture of policing in Jamaica at that time.
Exactly. You have to connect the dots. In the early 2000s, the Jamaica Constabulary Force was under a microscope from human rights groups.
For what?
For an extremely high rate of police killings, hundreds a year. Many were alleged to be extrajudicial executions. It created this culture of impunity.
A feeling that they weren't accountable.
Right. And when that's the culture, you don't necessarily have investigators who are trained or even incentivized to do careful forensic work, especially on a case involving a foreigner that could hurt the economy.
There were patterns of this kind of thing.
Documented patterns of police tampering with crime scenes, planting weapons, scrubbing evidence. So when you apply that context to this case,
Missing logbook, the erased tape.
they stop looking like simple incompetence. To the family, and to a lot of people who've analyzed this, it starts to look like a deliberate cover-up. Like the resort and maybe even local authorities were protecting someone or something.
And you could feel that tension between the American team and the JCF.
Oh, it was palpable. When the FBI brings in the K-9 unit, a standard tool in the U.S., the local police just dismiss it. They called the search dog a distraction.
A distraction from what? They had no other leads.
Exactly. It shows this fundamental conflict. The JCF was used to a certain way of doing things, and maybe they didn't trust this new methodology. Or maybe they didn't want the answers it would provide. For them, a dog's nose and a strand of hair weren't enough to charge a Jamaican citizen and create an international incident.
So Claudia's parents are fighting on two fronts. They're trying to find their daughter, and they're fighting against this wall of institutional apathy.
Apathy and a counter-narrative. The media portrayal of Claudia as a reckless adventure seeker gave everyone an easy out. It made her responsible for her own fate.
And it buried the truth under all this economic and political protectionism. That lack of hard evidence, the body, the blood, created a void, and it was just filled with conveyant speculation.
Which made the truth basically impossible to ever find.
Okay, so let's try to pull all this together and really weigh the theories against the evidence we do have, even if it is incomplete.
Let's do it. We can start with accidental death. Drowning, specifically. This was the first theory, the one the local police seemed to prefer.
Because it's neat, it's clean, no crime, no prosecution.
But as we said, it just doesn't fit the facts. The water in a grill is calm, it's shallow. For an adult to drown there accidentally is highly unlikely.
And the biggest problem is that her body was never found.
Never. That alone makes the theory incredibly weak. Plus, it does nothing to explain the missing logbook, the erased tape, or most importantly, her hair being in the trunk of that car.
Right, so we can pretty much set that one aside. What about voluntary disappearance?
This was the resort's theory. The Lover in the Hills story they pushed so hard.
And based on the evidence, this theory is, it's dead on arrival.
Completely. She just got her dream job, she had plans with her friend, and she locked her passport, her money, her entire identity in a safe. That is not the behavior of someone planning to run away.
So that really only leaves one plausible category.
Foul play. And this is where the international investigation's findings carry all the weight. The primary theory here has to involve Anthony Grant.
The circumstantial evidence is just so strong.
It's a chain. He was the last person she was known to be with intimately. She had just rejected him. He takes a 4-day sick leave right after she vanishes.
And the dog tracks her scent directly to his house and his belongings.
Into the trunk of his car. That's the part you can't get around. The search dog's findings suggest she was concealed and transported in that trunk.
And the hair confirms it. That hair is the single most important piece of physical evidence in the whole case. It proves she was there.
It proves she was in the trunk. But the lack of significant blood evidence, that was the loophole. That's what the JCF used to dismiss the case. They had proof of concealment, but they argued they didn't have proof of murder.
There is a secondary theory that pops up a lot online, a variation of foul play.
Abduction or human trafficking. This theory suggests that maybe Grant wasn't acting alone, or that he was just the first step in a larger criminal network.
And this idea gets traction because her body was never found.
Exactly. The hair proves she was moved in a vehicle. If she was quickly transported off the island or taken to a remote, heavily vegetated area, her remains might never be found. It's a horrifying thought, but it's consistent with the evidence we have.
So in the end, a lack of a body, the lack of prosecutable forensic evidence, it just gave the Jamaican police the out they needed, or the out they wanted.
I think so. The pressure to protect the tourism industry was immense, and it left this case in limbo forever.
And what's Claudia's legal status now?
She was declared legally dead in May of 2002, 2 years after she vanished. Her family did file a wrongful death lawsuit against the Sandals Resort,
Asserting that the resort's failures and the cover-up were directly responsible for them never finding out what happened.
Exactly. And to this day, her parents maintain a $50,000 reward. They're still hoping, after all this time, that it might compel someone to finally break the silence.
It's just heartbreaking. Her case really does highlight how vulnerable you can be as a solo traveler and the pain that comes when the very systems that are supposed to help you just fail.
They prioritize their own image over a person's life. And we're left with this collection of incredibly suspicious facts, the logbook, the video, the sanitized room, the dog's tracking, that all point to a terrible conclusion.
But never give that one piece of definitive proof that the legal system required for justice.
It's that tension, right? The
Yeah.
canine evidence and the hair tell a clear story of foul play, but the lack of a body allowed the official investigation to just be closed.
So we'll leave you with this question to think about. If Anthony Grant was involved, was his 4-day absence from work just about covering his own tracks, cleaning his home, destroying evidence? Or was that the time he, or maybe a collaborator, needed to transport her body somewhere so remote, so permanent, that it would be guaranteed to never, ever be found?
A question that is still hanging over the sands of Negril all these years later.
Next on Threads of Truth, we turn to Michael Negrete, a college student who vanished from UCLA in the early hours of the morning, leaving behind a dorm room, unanswered questions, and a mystery frozen in time.